Hello and welcome back. This is the 13th episode, episode number 13 of building a 2D game in Flutter. So what we'll do, we create a new tag. So again, 13th episode, so we'll have to create the tag. Episode 13 start. All right, so before we move on, so what we did the last episode, we fixed the hit of the player a little bit, and we added a way to debug this easy. And by the way, when I mentioned about how fast you can reload in Flutter and kind of see your changes, which and maybe also you were wondering why are these getters and not statics. It's because I want to be able to change them during the game. So if I just do this and just save, now you saw immediately this disappeared. The player is still in the same spot. So if I in the middle of the game I'm in a certain spot and I need to debug something, I can easily just do that immediately without even restarting or having to move the player back to where it was or whatever. Didn't work for the paint because the paint was a static field like in that module, and that's why if I would make this a static like this, I couldn't do the restart. And just to be also a little bit more clear about why this even works like this, why does the player not get reset or something like that, right? If you look at the main file, we are creating the game here inside the main, right? And now whenever we do a reload, right? Actually, all that gets done is like this part here restarts, and then it starts rendering again, and then it draws in these values from our game props, and so then it renders it differently. It renders it maybe without the debug, right? But since our game was created here, the game still has all its properties, right? The game doesn't change, and so our player is still in the same position, which is kind of nice. Okay, another thing I wanted to clear up, I wanted to make a little bit clearer about, the whole thing with the canvas. So let's just say, like how we moved this, right? Let's just say the canvas right now is centered here, right? And then the player happens to be, let's say, over here. So what we are basically saying is, okay, here's a player. This is where you would need to go. So let's look at what you would actually need to go. You need to go to the right, and then you need to go up. So that's basically, we calculate the distance from where the player currently is, right, and where we are currently centered. So we're saying we need to go over here, right, and we need to go here. And the only thing that we then did, so we had the x and the y, and the only thing we did, we didn't apply it at its full magnitude, right? We didn't say, okay, now suddenly, boom, go here, right? What we did instead is we said, okay, move over time. Basically, move like a certain percentage of it. So basically, by the next game loop, the center will be maybe something like here, right? And this is assuming that the player doesn't move. And then it gets closer and closer, so we're kind of following the player, right? Now, if the player moves in the meantime, say it moves here now, well, now we get a new dx dy, right? And now we're starting to do the same thing. So we're always lagging a little bit behind, but on purpose, because we want to get... we don't want to, like, if you don't do it, it looks really, it doesn't look as smooth, let's just say, right? I like this looks kind of smooth. Okay, now we're going to do a player HUD. And what's a HUD? Basically, we want to draw like a little thing up here that tells us a little bit about our condition. What's our health like, and so on. So what we'll do, we will have to go to our main file and say we want to wrap this whole thing with a stack, right? And what's a stack? Well, if we look up stack, Flutter, we'll find out that a stack is basically nothing else but something where we can render things on top of each other. So we can have multiple children here, and you can see we have multiple containers, and they kind of render on top of each other. It's just the one on the bottom like what you put in first goes in the bottom. So the one on the bottom is a little bit larger, has a little bit more width and height. So you can kind of see it shining through here. But basically, the top ones, basically, the last ones basically cover up the top one. So what we want to do is, so we want to have children here, right? But the thing is that, here's the question, right? Do we really want the gesture detector as part of, you know, like, what if you accidentally hit the HUD, right, and we want to fire? Like, let's say you're up here with your hand, right, and you're moving and you're firing and nothing happens, right? We don't want that. So actually what we want to do, we wrap this around the game widget. And so basically now our gesture detector still works on everything. So let's see here. It still works even if we hit the HUD. Okay, so now nothing should have changed. So I should just be able to, except of course if it throws an error. Okay, this is interesting. Okay, I remember seeing something in Flame where it was wrapping things with a direction thing. But what we'll do first is maybe we'll just put a scaffolder. We make a proper material app out of this. So what we'll do is we'll wrap this whole thing. I'm thinking. Might actually not be a problem if the gesture detector is just around the game, because we'll most likely click through. So let's undo this for a second, and I'm actually going to do it a different way. So let's do it this way. First of all, we're going to do a stack around here. So I'm going to actually do this by hand because it's just easier to write. So I'm going to put a stack around all of this, and then I'll say the children is this guy for now. Okay, and so it's still not happy. Gesture detector needs to be inside this. Okay, so now if I save this, let's see if I already get the error. Let's see if I reload, I still get the error. So this is interesting because I remember seeing something in Flame where they put some direction around parts of the game widgets. So you might actually have to look at that. Maybe that's okay. But what we want to do anyways, we want to create an app, because later on we might be able to actually have multiple screens, right? Like for instance, where you sign up to, you know, if you want to play a game. Right, if you're waiting for someone else to play with you. So let's put that here, and then we put the home is, and we put a scaffold around this. I think the scaffold might solve our problem. Let's do the body. Scaffold might add these things that we are currently missing. Okay, let's see. Okay, so yeah, that fixed it, right? So now we don't want to see the debug banner. So first of all, let's put a few commas here, render this nicer. So the scaffold has a way to say, sorry, the app actually, the material app has a way to say, I don't want to see the debug banner, because that's kind of, so now that's gone. Okay, so we have at least our thing now wrapped in an app, and that's pretty much all we want to do for now. Now the thing is, we have the stack, right? And now what we can do, we can add more widgets in the stack. And as I said, whatever goes first goes on the bottom. So our game should go on the bottom, and then we'll have a widget. And for now, we'll just put a we call it HUD, okay? And for now, what we'll do, we'll pass we'll just pass data to it. And so it will be some sort of a stats model. And we don't have that yet, so we'll have to create it. So let's go in here, models, and create a new Dart class stats model. Okay. And for now, all it will have is a final player health. Except it's not final. For now, we keep things in a way where we can change them. So then if we create one, stats model. Okay. Right. So now we can say we want to pass in the stats model. But let's actually go ahead and create this widget first. So what we're going to do is have a new folder or package and we call it widgets. So these are totally kind of, you know, around our game, so to speak. And in here we're going to create a package, we call it HUD. And in there we create a file and we call it HUD. HUD widget. Okay, and so in this HUD widget, what we're going to do is we're going to create a stateless widget, HUD widget. All right, and when we built this, we built well, there are a few tricks that we have to look at. And again, I'm going to refer to the HUD that we already built, or that I already built a while ago. Make sure I get this all right, because there was some trickiness about the sizing this. So it's going to be just a container, and it's just going to have a kind of a half transparent color. So we're going to say color, and it's basically 0x66 and then 0000000. So that means it's black, but it's semi-transparent, right? Okay, so now if I go back, we should be able to say HUD widget, all right? And we should actually start. Okay, now you can see that we put this HUD widget over everything, right? You can come see that everything got a little darker. But we see now that this works. So, but what we want to do, we don't want to fill the entire thing. What we actually want to do is we want to put some things in there. So let's actually start and build the other widgets, because then everything else will make a lot more sense. So right now we're going to build just the score widget, and that one was actually quite interesting to build. So let's build that score widget. Okay, so basically what I'm trying to do is, oh sorry, it's not the score widget. It's exactly not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to build the health widget. Health widget. Okay, and there's also a stateless widget. So now this is actually real Flutter now. Before we were doing all kind of Canvas stuff, which is almost works in everything, and applies to everything, but now we're building this. So see if I can get rid of all this. Okay, so let's just say first of all, like this is our phone, right? And then this is our game here. We got player, whatever. This is kind of like the canvas, walls. And so we're building this on top here. And what I want to show here is I want to show health, right? I'm not going to write the whole word, but health is just an H. And then here I want to draw like a bar. And depending on how much health you have, I want to fill it like this, right? So this looks like about 75% of health. So it fills up to here. And so you see, and then maybe I want to even change colors. Like if you're really well, it's green, you know, and if you're really, really bad, it's red. So that's what you're trying to do. So let's start with that. So now we at least know what the plan is, and we can go ahead and try to do that. So the thing is that we return a container, and the height of the container is always 20. Why is that? Well, we could make it a percentage of the device, right? But it doesn't really make sense if you have like a huge thing. We don't want the bar to go till here. If it's like, say, 20% or something like that, right? It makes sense to keep it at a certain height. And then the width is basically, and that's a tricky one. we want to basically make it fill the entire width. So what we can do, we can say the total width of, sorry, we don't want to, so the HUD will fill the entire thing, but we need to figure out what's the width of here to here, like the total width of the health bar, right? So like this this part here to here. Okay, so what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to focus on the health bar. I'm going to make this bigger. Okay, so we have the whole health bar here, right? There's the health bar, and then to say the health goes up to here, so we got that filled out. And so right now I'm talking about the entire width from here to here, right? And so this needs to be a certain percentage of the it should be a certain percentage of the entire HUD, right? Let's just say maybe a little less, maybe 40%. So what we can do is we can get the width of the of our device width. Okay, so now we know like how big. So now if we would use this would fill out all this, the whole thing. But we don't want that. We want roughly 0.4, which means 40%, little less than half, right? And then basically what we're going to do is, well, first of all, we have to figure out what's the total health of the player, right? So make the constant here, player total health, and so we can just say that's 100, right? And make that a double. So now we can say is the health width is the current health. So basically we need to be passed in what the current health of the player is, right? And so create a constructor, and so we don't need the key here. It's only going to be one of those. Okay, so we have the total health passed into us. So we say the health width is basically the total health divided, or sorry, our health that we have divided by the total health. And then obviously it's going to be times the total width. So that would mean if we have 100 health, then we divide this by the player total health, that would be 1. So we fill the total width, right? But let's say we only have, let's say we have a health of 50, divided by 100, that's 0.5, right? And then, so basically we're dividing the total width into 2, like 0.5 times the total width. So we get the half of the total width, and that's exactly what we want. So now what we can do, we'll start with, so we have that already, and we kind of thought a little bit ahead, but let's just say for now we're going to do the box decoration. So basically what we're doing is we're kind of decorating our container. So we're creating container, right? This is our container, and then we're putting this box around it. This is how we show, we get like this kind of border, right? And so for this box decoration, we can define the border, and we say it's border all. We want it on all sides, all, right? And then we need to define certain things in them. So we say, and all these things you can look up, by the way, right? So if you want to know how this works, you just go here. You could search on Google, or you just go quickly in here, and you can see how the box decoration works. So Flutter has a really awesome. I'm going to actually paste that link as an example, and then you can use it for other things as well. Flutter has a really awesome documentation about everything, with examples and everything. So really useful, and highly recommended to use that, especially when you're starting out. So first of all, you want to say what's the color of the border. I had blue-gray. So this is basically the border that will always show, right? This is like this part, and so it shouldn't be too prevalent, but also should be visible. And then the width, we're making it 2.0. And then the style, we can say border style, and we want it to be solid, right? So that's now the container itself. And so inside the container, we will then actually render the health. So for now, we don't need this at all. And what we'll do in our HUD widget, we will now include that as a child. So what's the so the HUD widget will have will basically stretch as far as it can. But we will give it a padding so it doesn't. So the padding means, so right, the difference between the margin and padding. So we want the HUD to stretch across the entire device, right? But we don't want to like start writing here, right, at the corner. We want to pad this a little bit and start writing here, maybe, right? Health or whatever. So we give it a padding of 8. Const agents is all, and all we just on the bottom, on the top, everywhere we just want 8. That's fine. And then we need to have, so the main axis alignment. So why is it complaining now? Quit insets. I'm not sure why it's complaining. Oh, it's because we are trying to make the padding a child. We're not trying to just apply the padding to the container because we want to have more control. So what we and we actually make the child. That's where basically our content will be in, right? So we're drawing the HUD all transparent all the way to the left and right, but then we start actually our content of that HUD. We start kind of padded, right, to the here and in these directions, top, left, and right. Okay. So what we'll do a row, and the reason why we need a row is because we're not only going to be rendering the health, we're going to be rendering other things which are going to be rendered next to each other. And so what we're going to say for now, we say we just want you to give space in between, right? And there are different ways. Again, you can look this up, right? If you look up this, you can kind of understand like what are the different ways. So space in between means place a free space evenly between the children, right? So if you have multiple labels or whatever, multiple data points, multiple stats, they'll just basically be they'll have the same space between each other, right? So children. So now basically for now we'll just put the health widget in here, right? And we have to give it a score. So that means this guy will have to take a score. Sorry, not score, but health. Keep thinking about the score. Create the constructor. Don't need to key again. All right. And so we'll pass on this health to that guy. All right. So, oh, actually, we want a new line there. Okay, so now we have that. Unfortunately, we don't have anything else yet, so it will most likely render on the left. We will render it on the right eventually. So now let's see how this works. Okay, so we got something. So it seems like the health widget is rendering in the middle there. So let's think about what, or like the whole thing basically is rendering in the center. We need to fix that somehow. Actually, we don't want to take the health here. We want to actually take the model. So that's model. And it's required. So the health is model.health. What? Player health. Okay, fine. Okay. Now let's figure out why this is rendering in the middle and not where we want it to render. There's some weird stuff happening here. And maybe now I'm starting to see maybe why because right now this it seems to be affected by wherever we are moving with our player. So again, this might be something that takes way longer than I thought it would, running into some weird things here. maybe it's because, oh, maybe it's because when we render, we need to restore the canvas at the very end. Maybe the canvas is actually being affected by, so maybe the drawing of these UI elements is now affected by how we move the canvas. That would be really weird, but let's just try this. So basically what we can do is when we render in our game, right? So we just basically save the canvas, and then and actually this should probably be part of our engine. We should make sure that this happens. It's a part of the game widget here. So when we paint, right? Where do we paint? Oh, here, here, right? So we should probably save the canvas here, which is in this case the context, and then restore it after the game render, right? So let's try now. Okay, so now the model, still don't have the model. So basically when we create the game, when we create the model, we need to pass in a health model, so or like a stats model, right? So what we're going to do is final stats model equals stats model, and we'll have a player health, and it will start out with the total health. Yeah, that makes sense. Player total health. And then we say, and so actually on the game model, we just say that we want one of those. We want the stats model. Let's put that up here. Fine. We can add that as well. Stats. All right, and so stats model. So now we're gonna stats model. Okay, and now basically when we do the HUD widget, actually should have warned us in the did model is required. So we can say model, and we say it's basically the game dot interesting. So we're only passing the game here, right? I mean, this will change anyways, right? So let's like pass the game model for now until we don't need it anymore. Because the thing is, obviously, we're not even going to make it required because we'll remove it. Probably even doing this episode, but we'll see how far we get. So that's okay. Okay, it doesn't know what the game model is, so tell it dot stats. Okay, so now we should be happy here. And then total width isn't used. That's fine for now. Okay, so again, stats was called on null. What? Stats was called on null. But how are we calling stats here? Doesn't make sense. Let's just restart. Maybe there's something going on here. Okay, yeah. So now, yeah. Okay. So what was happening is like moving our canvas actually did affect the rendering of the UIs that were rendered afterwards. That's something I did not know. So we have to make sure whenever we draw to the canvas and we kind of translate it and change the origin, all these things, that always we have to save the canvas and we have to restore the canvas. So one thing I want to show about this, so maybe it's in here, how this actually works. when you save, right, basically what's happening is when you save, basically you're pushing you're pushing basically the current state of the canvas onto the stack. So you can save multiple times, and every time you restore, you're pulling off one of those, right? So basically, even though while we're rendering, we're saving more and more things and restoring, we just have to make sure that every time we save, afterwards we have to restore, right? And then basically at the very end, we should be back to where we were in the very beginning, and it looks like we are here. Now the thing is, I don't like this at all. So we'll have to now go back to our health widget and figure out what's wrong here. So we give it a height to our. So basically, right now we don't give it a width yet here. So let's keep working on this. So we need to give it a width, and the width here is obviously the container will have the total width, right? So now if we save that, so now we have this container, right? Sorry, the health thing, right? Now, so this is like this part, right? Now we need to fill it with something. And basically what we can do, we can just inside this. So also what we want to do, we want to make it a little prettier. It looks very, and for our purposes right now, we make it bigger also. So let's see. Okay, now we have a bigger one. Also what you can start seeing here, what's happening is that, the canvas starts in the middle, but the player is on the very bottom left. And so whenever we start the game, it moves the camera slowly to where the player is. It's kind of a nice starting animation, right? I kind of like it, so we'll keep it. What we want to do though is we want to change the border of radius of our box decoration. So the border radius, let's make it, and we want to apply this to all, right? Radius, and that's kind of the tricky part in Flutter. You have to actually know how to get those things. So for instance, right now I'm thinking maybe I can just pass in a number, right? But no, this one takes a radius. And then the thing is, okay, so you want a radius, and so what's the radius? And then you have to look around here, and you have to look. Okay, I want a circular radius. So let's do that. Radius dot circular. So sometimes it's a little bit tricky to figure out how to build these widgets together, right? But again, the documentation makes it better. So you can kind of see we have now a rounded border, so that's nice. Now we come to the fun part, right? Now we basically come to the part where we fill in the actual health. So now we actually really need the health width. And what we'll do, we'll just create a container, and we'll and basically try different ways. But one way to do this is to say, okay, we'll just give it a margin. So meaning that right. So we just say on the right we give it a margin. So I can't draw here. So this part here we make it the margin, which is exactly like the total width minus the health width. So we just give a margin on the right and we're done. I tried first to make to give the container width and stuff like that. That didn't work quite as well. So we'll do it this way. So I say edge insets, and we only want on the right. So we only want on the right, and basically we want the total width minus the house width. And in order to see anything, we need to give it a color, right? And so for now, let's give it colors dot blue, right? And see what happens. So, okay, so something is not happy. Game props, where are we using? Oh, here we are using game props, and somehow it got lost. Okay, so now we see that we have the full, full health. And what we can do when we create the model, we can just set, like, let's just say a third, right? Now if we should refresh, well, we may have to restart because this happens during game when the game. Okay, here we go. So so here we can kind of see, so actually what we're going to do is we're going to not change that here. We're going to change it right in the widget while we're working on it. So now if I say the health width is this, in the player health, we can say, well, let's say it's actually, we have half the player health, right? Okay, and now I should be able to just quickly divide by 4, refresh, quickly we see how this works, right? So now the cool thing is we can easily just change this color. And I'm actually going to, I'm not going to write this code. This is just boilerplate code, and I'm just going to paste it in here and walk through it. So what we can do, we can say, well, we can determine the health color by how much health the player has. So if the health is 80% of the total health, then we return green, right? And we can see this color here. Otherwise, we return whatever that other colors and another green, right? Then if it's kind of in trouble, we return orange, and starting really in trouble, we return red, right? So now all I have to do here is to change this and say we want the health color. And now if I save, now we can see this is green, and it shouldn't be. Oh, that's because we were messing with the health, right? and so we actually have to, for these intents and purposes, what we'll do is we'll change the health. Now this one cannot be constant anymore. Okay, fine. So what we'll do is we'll actually just say health equals, we make it small. Let's say 40%, right? So now it's red. Okay, and that's exactly what we say. Let's say an orange. But right at 0.4, it's actually already red. If you make it 0.5, it'll be orange. If we make it 0.6, and you can see how fast we can like iterate and test these things out, right? So and so you can kind of get the idea of right how this works. So we can undo this now. We see that this works. We got the health widget finished. So if I save, it's full health again, right? Now we are in a really good place here. What we want to do though, well, we may not even want to put like a label. It might be obvious that that's your health, right? So we don't have to put a label next to it that says health. So we are in a really good place. And now what we need to do though is whenever the health changes, first of all, we need to change the health, right? And then we need, whenever the health changes, we need to update our widgets, right? So first of all, we're going to check this in because we got a bunch of things that we did. So basically, so the HUD, we added HUD with a health widget, right? And so now what we need to do actually, we need to first of all make the player change its health whenever something happens. And so where does something, so a player doesn't have the stats on it. It's on a different thing, right? And that's because we try to separate the speed and the movement of the player from something that will show up in the HUD. It's just a choice. There are other ways to do this, but we'll do it this way. So now what we need to do is whenever the player hits a wall, that's what I said we want to remove. So when we have a check wall collision, right now basically we are only changing the velocity of the player. But what we actually want to do, we also want to maybe have a health hit, right? So we want a player to take a hit on his health. So so basically whenever we hit the wall, we want to not only we don't want to like subtract a constant, because we want it to be dependent on the velocity of the player, right? So what we'll actually do is we're going to go to our game props, and we actually may run out of time while we do this, but we'll try to get as far as we can. So we put this here. So player hits wall health factor, and that's just a factor, and that factor will basically be taken into account when we calculate we take the speed into account, right? So if I hit the wall like this, right, that's obviously worse than if I hit it like maybe like a little bit, right? So we want to basically take the velocity into account and multiply by that factor. And then also what we want to make sure is like if I move really fast and then I hit the wall this way, that's not quite as bad as a head-on collision, right? So I have to actually look at which direction is the player moving at, right? Like, did I hit it with the x-axis or with the y-axis? So we already have the code here that figures it out. Basically, if I'm hitting on the x-axis, right, I need to look at the speed of x, right, on the x-axis. If I hit on the y-axis, the other way around. So then basically I need to take a health hit. So what we're going to do is we're going to first write that code, and then we're going to have to figure out how to actually communicate that back out, right? Because right now we're only taking one output of our function, right? Only one return value. But basically we can easily calculate the health toll here. So basically we say double health, which is a final health toll, right? And again, I don't want to mention the I don't want to mention like the game props directly in here. So we can say a wall hit health toll factor, and I want to pass it in here. And then basically when we call this, we'll pass it in. Name props dot health player hits wall health factor. Okay, cool. So now we're back here, and so the health toll is basically if we hit the x-axis, we have to take the velocity into account. Velocity, and be looking at the x, but we need to take the absolute value, right? Otherwise, if we're moving to the left, we basically end up increasing our health, right? It needs to be always a positive toll, and then we say the health health toll factor. Okay, so that would be the health toll, and in the case we hit the y-axis, would be just dy, and that's it. Now the question is, how do we get that health toll back out, right? And so we need to basically here return something that has two things in it. We could create a class, check wall collision return value, or we could just say we have a tuple and it returns two things, right? It returns us the offset which is the new velocity, and the health toll that we took. Okay, so now we don't have a tuple yet, right? And I'm not going to implement this here from scratch. That's just really not necessary. So what we'll do instead is we'll find I'll try to find the tuple implementation here. I thought I had one anyways. Okay. I thought I had this type of something. Yeah, so I had basically a types thing. And I think that, yeah, so the tuple is really just like a really small thing. So we'll add it. I don't know if it should even part of the engine. I'm going to create a types class here. And I'm going to put it in there. I'm going to make it immutable. Okay, so now we have a tuple. So basically here we have a generic thing. So we're saying like we have basically two things on this tuple, two data points, and they can be any type, T and U, and then basically so it's a generic data structure, right? We can give it whatever we need it to be. So now if we import types, okay, now of course we get all these errors, but basically now we can see that this is a, just going to hover over this. This is now a tuple T of U, and then T would be the offset and U would be the double, right? So now obviously we get a bunch of errors here because we are getting. So we check the collation first. Final check. Okay, and then basically velocity would be check dot first, right? So now we're back to happy. The only thing is that here we're returning handle hit also needs to return something. And the thing is, what I don't understand is why it's complaining. Because handle, they are return. Oh, because those are not returning tuples yet. Yeah. Okay, so basically we need to return the tuple. And it's going to be this value and the health toll. Alright. I don't know if it's still complaining. But that should actually work. And then we're going to do the same thing here. Tuple. And then we return the health toll here. And it's still complaining. And I'm pretty sure there's some weird thing in here. Okay, so we just need that. And now it should have reformatted that as well. And then obviously here we're returning a tuple, and basically the velocity is the same and the health toll is 0, right? That's if you didn't hit anything. All right. So now we go back here. So now our code is working. We can refresh this, and it works still. And now we got an exception. So good thing we checked. So 2 double was called on null. Okay, so if the velocity is 0, is null. Hold on. 2 double was called on null. Where did we? What? Okay, let's see. The player model should have a velocity. I only can imagine that this is somehow not passed incorrectly. But we did do that here, right? Oh, I know why. Because we need to actually restart. Do we? We actually restart the entire game because I'm not trusting that this is actually a real problem. Let's also clear this console here. And let's restart fresh because I'm not really trusting that there's really anywhere null. Otherwise we'll find out in a second. So that's why we stopped today, by the way. We will update the stats. We will just not update our HUD yet. And Donnerwocht, I'm just seeing your question right now. I do not create games professionally. I wish. I'm actually working for a company, Cypress.io, where we are helping people write tests easier in the browser and everywhere else. So I'm doing TypeScript most of the day. But I enjoy creating games. That was always one of my dreams, create a game, and now I'm doing it. Everyone who has the same dream should. Okay, now we're not getting the double error, and now it actually is not crashing anymore. So let's see if we hit something. Okay, cool. So now we are kind of in a good place. Now we just need to update our stats model from the health thing, right? So basically all we need to do now is when we update the player, we need a player. And so this is a little dirty, I would say. Like now the player is actually, it's getting a player model, and it also needs to get a stats model. So we name this to player. All right, and then we get a stats model of stats. And so what we also will do, we'll be clear about the fact that we are modifying this in place. Otherwise, now we'd have to have a tuple again. But the thing is, there's no reason to return this because we're actually modifying. This, right? So all we'd have to do is stats dot player health minus equals check dot second. So now our stats will go down, right? and our player health will go down. Now, obviously, here we have to pass it in. Okay, we're calling this. Okay, so now it's complaining correctly because we need to pass it in game.stats, right? Now it's happy, and the thing is, we are here assigning the player model here, but this is like not necessary because we're actually modifying this in place. So let's just refresh. Cannot return. Okay, right? Because now we are actually no longer returning this. So now we should be happy. Okay, cool. So now all we need to do is, for now, is to, when we update, we'll just do a quick debug print to make sure that this actually works. So let's just do this way. If check.second is greater than 0, right? Then we do this. It doesn't hurt anything if it's actually 0 and we change it, but we want to print it only if it changed. Health, and we say player health, right? And then once we actually are showing this in the HUD, we don't need this anymore. Stats.player health. Stats.player health. Okay, so now we should actually print it. So when the player hits something, okay, so now we only have 96% of, or 96 of health. Since we are at 100, that's the same as 96%. You can kind of see like we are decreasing our health in a certain way, and the more we hit it, you see like if I hit it just slightly, it doesn't do that much damage. You can see that. If I hit it really hard, I got 4 in one step, right? Versus before here I got less than 1. So it's actually working exactly how we intend, which is perfect because we are just on the top of the hour, and I want to kind of keep these videos to an hour each, and also each day to 2 hours sessions. So we are in a perfect spot. I will check this in, and we'll say player or let's say starts updating or taking health toll when hitting wall. All right, now we'll tag this. This is so we have these tags, right? Every episode has a tag where the start of the episode is tagged at the end of the episode, and then we push this, and then this up there. This ends the stream for today. Tomorrow we will start actually showing the health in the up here, right? You can kind of see that. That's interesting, actually. This. Oh, okay. This is interesting. When we actually refresh, it applies that health. This will not work for real, but basically when it rebuilds, right? Like if you take health hits now, it will not update right away. But if we refresh the game, it does. So we can kind of see how this will work. But we basically every time the model, the stats model changes, we somehow have to, be hooked into that, and basically update our HUD widget here. And we'll show how to do that tomorrow. We'll most likely use a stream that kind of streams us these values. And yeah, but that's tomorrow. So thank you very much for watching, and don't about if you like it looks like you liked it very much. I'm very happy to do this. I'm very happy to have people that are actually enjoying this, so make sure to come back tomorrow. I'm doing this week every day, same time, so hope to see you there. And yeah, that's it. Thank you very much. Bye bye.